I was about to close a $300 million deal with a Mafia boss when my maid's daughter walked into the room and whispered, "He is lying to you." What happened next? Changed everything. I am glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you are watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My hands trembled as I straightened the contract papers one final time. $300 million. The numbers seemed impossible, even printed there in black and white on the crisp letterhead. At 64, I thought my biggest deals were behind me. I thought I would spend my remaining years managing what was left of Whitmore Logistics, watching it slowly decline like so many family businesses do. But Marco DeLuca had changed everything. He sat across from me in my conference room, his silver hair perfectly styled, his Italian suit probably worth more than most people's cars. There was something magnetic about him, the way he spoke, the confidence in his gestures, the slight accent that made everything sound more sophisticated. When he had first contacted me 8 months ago, I had been skeptical. Men like Marco DeLuca did not usually seek out companies like mine. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, his voice smooth as aged whiskey, "this partnership will transform your legacy. Your father would be proud." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Dad had built Whitmore Logistics from nothing, working 15-hour days until the stress killed him at 59. I had been fighting to honor his memory ever since, but the market had changed. We could not compete with the big corporations anymore. Marco leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. $300 million for a 65% stake. You will retain control of operations, of course. I am simply the silent partner, providing the capital injection you need. It was too good to be true. But I had my lawyers review everything 3 times. The money was real. Marco's credentials checked out, at least the ones we could verify. He owned holdings across Europe and South America. He had fingers in shipping, real estate, import-export, the kind of diversified portfolio that old money built over generations. "The funds will transfer today," Marco continued, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "We can have this finalized within the hour." My heart pounded. After struggling for years watching competitors steal our contracts, laying off employees who had been with us for decades, this was salvation. This was the miracle I had prayed for every night. I reached for my pen, my signature ready to change everything. That was when the conference room door burst open. Rachel stumbled in her dark hair, disheveled, her usual composed demeanor completely shattered. She looked like she had been running. Her mother, Rosa Castillo, had worked for my family for 16 years, keeping our house spotless, preparing meals, handling the mundane details that kept my life organized. Rachel had always been quiet, respectful, almost invisible. At 29, she worked part-time, helping her mother while attending community college. She had never, ever interrupted a business meeting. "Mrs. Whitmore," she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying an urgency that made my blood freeze. "He is lying to you." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 12. Marco's expression shifted so subtly I almost missed it. A tightening around his eyes, a slight stiffening of his shoulders, but his smile remained perfectly in place. "I am sorry," I stammered, heat flooding my cheeks. "Rachel, what are you doing here? You cannot just please—" She interrupted, her dark eyes locked on mine with an intensity I had never seen before. "Do not sign anything, please." The humiliation crashed over me like a wave. Here I was, conducting the most important business meeting of my life, and the housekeeper's daughter was treating me like a confused old woman who needed protection from her own decisions. Marco chuckled, a sound like velvet over steel. "Perhaps the young lady is concerned about employment security. I assure you all current staff will be retained." "That is not—" Rachel started, but I cut her off. "Enough!" My voice came out sharper than I intended. Rachel, leave now. She took a step closer to the table, desperation creeping into her voice. Mrs. Whitmore, I know how this looks, but you have to listen to me. Marco DeLuca is not who he says he is. The silence that followed was deafening. Marco's fingers drummed once against the polished wood of the conference table, a gesture so subtle I might have imagined it, but something about that tiny movement sent a chill down my spine. Young lady, Marco said, his tone still pleasant but with an edge that had not been there before. These are serious accusations. I hope you have proof to back them up. Rachel's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, then looked at me with something that might have been pity. I am trying to save your life. My life? I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to my own ears. Rachel, you are being ridiculous. Mr. DeLuca is offering us the chance to rebuild everything. This is legitimate business. It is not, she whispered. And if you sign that contract, you will not live to regret it. The words hung in the air like a threat. Marco's smile never wavered, but I caught him glancing at his watch. A simple gesture, but it felt loaded with meaning I could not quite grasp. I think, I said carefully, standing up from my chair, this meeting needs to be postponed. Eleanor, Marco's voice was soft, almost fatherly. Do not let unfounded paranoia destroy the opportunity of a lifetime. Your company is hemorrhaging money. Without this injection, you will be bankrupt within 5 months. He was right, and we both knew it. The quarterly reports were sitting in my office safe, painting a picture of steady decline that kept me awake at night. Without this deal, I would have to start laying off more employees within weeks. The pension fund was already stretched thin. Rachel stepped between me and the contract, her small frame somehow commanding the entire room. Mrs. Whitmore, I know you do not trust me. I know I am just the maid's daughter to you. But my mother overheard something. Something about you. What kind of something? I found myself asking despite everything. Rachel glanced at Marco, then back at me. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. They are planning to kill you after you sign. The pen slipped from my fingers, clattering against the table. Marco was already standing, straightening his tie with practiced ease. I think emotions are running too high for productive discussion, he said smoothly. Perhaps we should reconvene tomorrow, Eleanor. Give you time to consider your options. But as he gathered his papers, I noticed his hands were not quite steady, and for the first time since he had walked into my office, Marco DeLuca looked like a man with something to hide. After he left, Rachel and I stood alone in the conference room, the unsigned contract lying between us, like evidence of a crime that had not yet been committed. You have no idea what you have just done, I told her, my voice shaking with anger and something else I could not name. Rachel met my gaze steadily. I know exactly what I have done. I have bought you one more day to stay alive. As she walked out, leaving me alone with the contract and my doubts, I could not shake the feeling that my entire world was about to collapse. But I did not know yet whether Rachel was my salvation or my destruction. The pen lay where I had dropped it, and the signature line remained ominously blank. Sleep did not come that night. I lay in my king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, while Rachel's words echoed in my mind. They are planning to kill you after you sign. Ridiculous paranoid, the desperate imagination of a young woman who had probably watched too many crime shows. But as the hours crawled by, doubt crept in like fog under a door. I had built my life on logic, on careful analysis of facts and figures. Emotion was a luxury I could not afford in business. Yet something about Marco's reaction to Rachel's interruption nagged at me. The way his smile had flickered for just a moment, the subtle glance at his watch. By morning, I had convinced myself I was being foolish. Marco DeLuca represented everything I needed: capital connections, a future for the company Dad had built with his bare hands. I could not let the hysterical warnings of a college student destroy that. I called Marco at 7:30 a.m. sharp. "Eleanor?" His voice was warm, concerned. "I hope you have had time to reconsider. I would hate for yesterday's interruption to damage what we are building together." "I am ready to proceed," I said, gripping the phone tighter than necessary. "Can we meet today?" "Of course," Marco replied smoothly. "But perhaps we should meet somewhere more private this time. I have a suite at the Regency Plaza Hotel. We can finalize everything without any unexpected visitors." Something about the way he said unexpected visitors made my skin crawl, but I pushed the feeling aside. "What time shall we say?" I asked. 2:30, he said. "And Eleanor, perhaps it would be best if you came alone. These documents are highly confidential." After I hung up, I found myself standing at my kitchen window, watching Rosa Castillo tend to the garden beds. She had been with our family for 16 years, ever since her husband died, and left her with a young daughter to raise. Quiet, hardworking, never asking for anything beyond her modest salary and the small apartment above our garage. Now her daughter was claiming my business partner was a killer. I grabbed my coffee and headed to the office early, hoping work would clear my head. But I had barely settled at my desk when my secretary buzzed the intercom. "Mrs. Whitmore there. Is a young woman here to see you? She says it is urgent." Rachel walked into my office looking like she had not slept either. Her usually neat appearance was rumpled, her eyes red-rimmed, but determined. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know you do not want to see me, but I have to try one more time." "Rachel, I have made my decision. The meeting is today at 2:30 at the Regency Plaza Hotel," she asked, and my blood went cold. "How did you—" "Because I have been watching him." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to a photo. "This was taken outside your office building yesterday morning, 2 hours before your meeting." The image showed Marco standing beside a black sedan. But he was not alone. 2 men in dark suits flanked him, their faces hard and unfriendly. One had a visible scar running from his ear to his jaw. "Who are they?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I do not know their names, but I know what they are." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. "My mother has seen men like this before, back in Guatemala before we came here." "What are you suggesting?" "I am not suggesting anything," she said. "I am telling you Marco DeLuca is not just a businessman, and those men are not his assistants." I stared at the photo, my mind racing. The men looked exactly like what Rachel was implying: muscle enforcers, the kind of people who solved problems with violence instead of lawyers. "Even if that is true," I said slowly, "it does not mean he intends to hurt me. Many legitimate businessmen need security." Rachel's shoulders sagged. "Mrs. Whitmore, my mother heard them talking yesterday after you postponed the meeting. They were speaking Spanish. They did not know she could understand." "What did they say?" I asked. "Marco was angry," Rachel said quietly. "He said the old woman was supposed to sign yesterday, and now she was getting suspicious. One of the other men asked if they should just take the money and run. Marco said no. They needed her signature first, and then—" She swallowed hard. "Then they needed to clean up loose ends." The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "Rachel, if this is some kind of elaborate joke—" "It is not a joke." Her composure cracked, and I saw real fear in her eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore, I know you think I am just the maid's daughter. I know you see me as nothing more than part of the furniture, but I am trying to save your life." "Why—" The question came out harsher than I intended. "If what you are saying is true, why risk yourself to warn me? What is in it for you?" Rachel was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was so soft, I had to strain to hear it. Because someone should care enough to try. The simple honesty of it hit me like a slap. Here was this young woman, someone I had barely acknowledged in 16 years, putting herself in potential danger because she believed I deserved protection. I have to go to this meeting, I said finally. If I do not show up if I back out now, then you disappear completely and he finds another way to get what he wants. Rachel nodded grimly. I know, but maybe there is another way. What do you mean? I asked. Let me come with you. Absolutely not. Not to the meeting, she said quickly, but to the hotel. I can wait in the lobby. Keep watch if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, you will what? Call the police and tell them what? That you overheard some Spanish conversation that might have been about killing someone. Rachel's jaw tightened. I will figure something out. Despite everything, I found myself almost smiling. This slip of a girl barely out of college was prepared to take on dangerous men to protect someone who had never shown her any particular kindness. Rachel, I appreciate what you are trying to do. But Mrs. Whitmore, her voice cut through my protestations with surprising authority. You are going to that meeting whether I help you or not. I can see it in your eyes. You need this deal too much to walk away. So let me help you. Let me be there in case you need someone. I studied her face, seeing something I had never noticed before: determination, intelligence, a strength that had nothing to do with physical size and everything to do with character. Fine, I said against my better judgment. But you stay in the lobby. No matter what happens, you do not come upstairs. Relief flooded Rachel's features. Thank you. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Rachel, if you are wrong about this, if Marco is legitimate, and this deal falls through because of your suspicions. She paused at the door, her hand on the handle. Then you will be alive to hate me for it. After she left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the photo on her phone that she had forwarded to mine. Those men did not look like accountants or lawyers. They looked like the kind of people who made problems disappear. But even knowing that I could not walk away from $300 million, the company was dying. Our employees were counting on me. Dad's legacy was slipping away with every passing month. At 1:15, I drove to the Regency Plaza Hotel, my hands steady on the wheel despite the chaos in my mind. In my rearview mirror, I caught glimpses of a small blue Honda following at a discreet distance. Rachel was keeping her word. As I pulled into the hotel parking garage, one thought echoed through my mind with terrifying clarity. By evening, I would either be the savior of Whitmore Logistics or I would be dead. The unsigned contract sat in my briefcase like a loaded gun, and I still did not know which way I planned to aim it. The Regency Plaza Hotel lobby was exactly what I expected from a 5-star establishment: marble floors that clicked under my heels, crystal chandeliers casting warm light over leather furniture, the kind of understated elegance that whispered money rather than shouted it. I spotted Rachel immediately sitting in a wingback chair near the elevators, a textbook open in her lap, as if she were just another college student studying in an upscale environment. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave an almost imperceptible nod. Marco's suite was on the 18th floor. As the elevator climbed, I tried to calm my racing heart. This was business. This was salvation for my company. Whatever Rachel thought she had overheard, whatever those photos showed, I was here to secure the future of Whitmore Logistics. The elevator chimed softly, and the doors opened to reveal a hallway lined with expensive artwork. Suite 1805 was at the end. Its mahogany door looking more like the entrance to a private residence than a hotel room. Marco answered on the first knock, and my breath caught. Gone was the perfectly tailored businessman from yesterday. Today he wore dark jeans and a black sweater that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders. His silver hair was slightly mussed, and there was something different in his eyes, a predatory gleam that made my skin crawl. "Eleanor," he said, stepping aside to let me enter right on time. The suite was massive, a living area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a dining table set for two, and what looked like a bedroom beyond. But what caught my attention were the three other men sitting around the coffee table. They looked up as I entered, and I recognized two of them from Rachel's photograph. The scarred man gave me a smile that never reached his eyes. "I thought we were meeting alone," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just some associates," Marco replied smoothly, gesturing toward the dining table where the contract papers were spread out. "They are here to witness the signing, purely ceremonial." Everything about this felt wrong. The casual dress, the presence of these men, the way Marco moved around the suite like he owned it. But the contract was there waiting. $300 million in capital that could save everything Dad had built. "Shall we get started?" Marco asked, pulling out a chair for me. I sat down, acutely aware of the four men watching my every movement. The contract looked the same as yesterday, pages of legal language that my lawyers had already reviewed, transfer instructions for the fund's partnership agreements that would inject new life into Whitmore Logistics. "The money will transfer the moment you sign," Marco said, settling into the chair beside me. "My bank is standing by." I picked up the pen, my hand trembling slightly, the signature line beckoning. Just my name, and everything would change. That was when my phone rang. "I am sorry," I said, glancing at the screen. It was Rachel. "I should take this." Marco's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps it can wait. We are so close to finalizing everything." But something in his voice, a hint of urgency, maybe even desperation, made me answer the call. "Mrs. Whitmore," Rachel's voice was breathless, panicked. "Do not sign anything. I am in the Hotel Business Center, and I have been researching Marco DeLuca online." "Rachel, this is not the time." "He is not Marco DeLuca," she interrupted. "The real Marco DeLuca died 4 years ago in a car accident in Palermo, Italy. Mrs. Whitmore, the man you are with, is using a dead man's identity. He used falsified European credentials, the kind that pass every routine background check in the States." The pen slipped from my fingers for the second time in 2 days. I looked up to find Marco watching me intently, his dark eyes unreadable. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Yes," I managed. "Just a minor issue at the office." I ended the call, my mind reeling. The man sitting beside me was not Marco DeLuca. He was someone else entirely. Someone who had stolen the identity of a dead businessman and crafted an elaborate deception. What did he really want? "You look pale, Eleanor," Marco, or whoever he was, said softly. "Perhaps some water." He gestured to one of his associates who moved toward the wet bar. But as the man passed behind my chair, I caught a glimpse of something that made my blood freeze. A shoulder holster, the dark metal of a gun, just visible beneath his jacket. "Actually," I said, standing abruptly, "I am feeling a bit unwell. Perhaps we should postpone this until tomorrow." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Marco's charming smile faltered, and for a moment I saw something predatory flash across his features. "Eleanor," he said, rising slowly, "you have come this far. Your company needs this injection of capital. Why walk away when we are so close to success? I just need some time to..." "To what?" His voice was sharper now, the Italian accent slightly more pronounced. "To let your doubts destroy the opportunity of a lifetime." The three men around the coffee table had stopped pretending to read their newspapers. They were watching us now, their attention focused and dangerous. I think," I said carefully, I should have my lawyers review the contract one more time. Marco laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your lawyers have already reviewed it 3 times. What could they possibly find now that they missed before? He was right, and we both knew it. But stalling was the only strategy I had left. Nevertheless, I said, moving toward my purse, I prefer to be thorough. Sit down, Eleanor. The words were spoken quietly, but they carried the weight of a command. When I looked at Marco, at the man wearing Marco's face, I saw someone entirely different from the charming businessman who had first contacted me. I am sorry, I said softly. Sit down. He gestured to the chair I had vacated. We are going to finish this conversation. The scarred man had moved to block the door. Another stood near the windows. The third remained by the wet bar, his hand resting casually near his jacket. For the first time since entering the suite, I understood that I might not be leaving. You seem nervous, Marco said, settling back into his chair as if we were still conducting a normal business meeting. Is there something troubling you? I forced myself to sit, my mind racing through possible escape routes. The door was blocked. The windows were 18 floors up. My phone was on the table, but I doubted they would let me use it again. I am fine, I managed. I just want to make sure I understand all the terms. Oh, I think you understand perfectly. Marco leaned forward, his eyes never leaving mine. The question is whether you are going to cooperate or whether we need to find alternative methods of persuasion. The mask was completely off now. Whatever charm he had used to lure me here had evaporated, leaving behind something cold and calculating. What do you really want? I asked. Marco smiled. And this time, it was genuine. What I have wanted from the beginning, Eleanor. Your signature on that contract. But why? If the money is not real, if you are not who you claim to be. Who says the money is not real? He pulled out his phone, scrolling to what looked like a bank account. The balance showed exactly $300 million. The funds are quite genuine. The bank account is legitimate. What is false is simply my identity. Then who are you? Someone who needs to wash a very large sum of money, he said matter-of-factly. Your company provides the perfect vehicle. A legitimate business with a respected history struggling enough to need a capital injection, but stable enough to handle large transactions without raising suspicions. The pieces began clicking into place. This was not about partnership or investment. This was about using Whitmore Logistics as a front for money laundering. And after you have cleaned your money through my company, Marco's smile widened. Well, that is where things become complicated. You see, Eleanor, you would know too much. You would be a liability. My phone buzzed with a text message. Marco glanced at it, then at me. Your young friend seems quite persistent, he said. What did she tell you on that call? I said nothing, but my silence was apparently answer enough. Ah, Marco nodded. She discovered my little identity issue. Clever girl. I underestimated her. He gestured to the scarred man who moved toward the phone on the table. Call her, Marco commanded. Tell her to come up. Tell her you need her help with something. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. Marco raised an eyebrow. No, I will not drag her into this. Eleanor, you misunderstand the situation. You do not have a choice. He nodded to one of his men who pulled out his phone. We know what car she drives, where she lives, where her mother works. The question is whether she joins this conversation willingly or whether we collect her ourselves. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Rachel had risked everything to warn me, and now I had led her straight into danger. What guarantee do I have that you will let her go if I cooperate? Marco's laugh was genuinely amused. You do not, but you have my word. that if you do not cooperate, what happens to both of you will be considerably worse than if you do." My hands shook as I reached for my phone. Whatever game this man was playing, whatever he really wanted Rachel and I, were now both trapped in it. As I scrolled to her number, one thought echoed through my mind. The girl who tried to save me was about to become another victim of my greed. I stared at my phone, Marco's threat hanging over me like a sword. Call Rachel up here, or they would go get her themselves. Either way, she was going to be dragged into this nightmare because of my greed. My desperate need to save a company that might not be worth saving. "I am waiting, Eleanor," Marco said, his voice deceptively patient. Before I could dial, my phone rang again. Rachel's name flashed on the screen. "Answer it," Marco commanded. "Put it on speaker." With trembling fingers, I accepted the call and pressed the speaker button. "Mrs. Whitmore," Rachel's voice filled the suite tight with urgency. "I found something else, something about your family." Marco's eyes sharpened. The men around the room shifted suddenly more alert. "Rachel, I cannot talk right now." "Mrs. Whitmore, please listen. I know why he is targeting you specifically. It is not random." Her voice cracked slightly. "He knew your husband." The words hit me like a physical blow. Robert had been dead for 9 years, killed in what police ruled a single-car accident on a rain-slicked highway. But the pain of losing him still felt fresh, especially when the company he had helped build was struggling. "That is impossible," I whispered. "Mrs. Whitmore, your husband's accident, it was not an accident." Marco was watching me with something that might have been amusement. The scarred man had moved closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with something sharper. Gun oil, maybe. "Rachel, you need to leave the hotel right now." "I cannot. They are watching me." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "There are 2 men in the lobby now, and they are not trying to hide the fact that they are watching me." Marco gestured to one of his associates, who nodded and spoke quietly into his phone in what sounded like Spanish. "Tell her to come up," Marco said softly. "Tell her you need her help. Make it convincing." "Rachel," I said, my voice breaking, "I need you to come to Suite 1805. I need your help with something." "Mrs. Whitmore, are you all right? You sound strange." "Just come up, please." There was a long pause. Then, "Mrs. Whitmore, if you are in trouble, say the word contract again." Smart girl. Even in crisis, she was thinking clearly. "The contract is here," I said carefully. "We are discussing the contract terms." Another pause. "I am coming up," she said finally. "But Mrs. Whitmore, there is something I need to tell you when I get there. Something about who I really am." The line went dead. Marco smiled and settled back in his chair like a cat that had cornered its prey. "Who she really is," he mused. "Interesting choice of words." "What do you mean?" I asked, my throat dry. "Oh, Eleanor, you really do not know, do you?" Marco's amusement seemed genuine. "Your faithful housekeeper's daughter is not quite what she appears to be." Before I could ask what he meant, there was a soft knock at the door. The scarred man opened it and Rachel walked in, her face pale but determined. She took in the scene quickly, the men positioned around the room, Marco's casual posture, my obvious distress. "Mrs. Whitmore," she said carefully, "are you hurt?" "Not yet," Marco answered for me. "But the evening is young." Rachel's jaw tightened, and I saw something in her expression that I had never noticed before. Strength, yes, but something else, something that looked almost familiar. "Let her go," Rachel said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Your business is with me." Marco raised an eyebrow. "Is it? How interesting. And why would my business be with the housekeeper's daughter? Because I am not the housekeeper's daughter. Rosa isn't my mother. My real mother was Maria Alvarez years before she married again and took the name Maria Torre. The words fell into the room like stones into still water, creating ripples that reached every corner. I stared at Rachel, my mind struggling to process what she had just said. I am sorry. What? I managed. Rachel looked at me, and for the first time in 15 years, I really saw her. The dark hair that caught the light in familiar ways, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way she held her shoulders when she was determined. Mrs. Whitmore, she said softly. Robert Whitmore was my father. The room tilted, my vision grayed at the edges, and I gripped the arms of my chair to keep from falling. That is impossible, I whispered. Robert never, he would not. He did not know, Rachel said quickly. I do not think he ever knew. Marco was watching this revelation unfold with obvious satisfaction. Oh, this is better than I hoped, he murmured. Shut up, Rachel snapped. And something in her voice reminded me so powerfully of Robert that my heart nearly stopped. My mother was Maria Castillo before she became Maria Torres. Rachel continued, her eyes never leaving mine. She worked as a secretary at Whitmore Logistics 28 years ago before you and Robert were married. The pieces began clicking together with horrible clarity. Maria had started working for us 15 years ago, but she had always seemed to know more about the house, about Robert's preferences, than a new employee should. I had attributed it to her attention to detail, her dedication to doing the job well. Robert had an affair, I said numbly. A brief one, Rachel confirmed. According to my mother, it ended when he got engaged to you. She never told him she was pregnant. She thought it was better that way. But why come to work for us? Why bring you into our house? I asked, my voice trembling. Rachel's composure cracked slightly. Because she wanted me to know who my father was, even if he could not know who I was. She wanted me to see the man he was, the family he built. She thought maybe someday she would tell him. I finished for her, but then he died, and it was too late. Marco slow clapped, the sound sharp and mocking in the heavy silence. What a touching family reunion! Now that we have everyone together, perhaps we can get back to business. You killed him, Rachel said, turning to face Marco with a fury that transformed her entire demeanor. You killed my father. Indirectly, Marco admitted with a shrug. Robert was asking too many questions about some of my business dealings. He had discovered certain irregularities in shipments coming through the port facilities his company used. Nothing that could not be explained, but Robert had always been annoyingly honest. The casual way he spoke about my husband's murder made my stomach revolt. Robert had died because he had stumbled onto something he should not have seen. So you had him killed, I said, my voice barely audible. I had him convinced to take a late-night drive on a dangerous road during a storm, Marco corrected smoothly. What happened after that was simply unfortunate timing. You bastard, Rachel breathed. And now, Marco continued, his widow is going to help me clean $300 million through the company he loved so much. There is a certain poetic justice to it, do you not think? I looked at Rachel, really looked at her, and saw Robert in the shape of her nose, in the determined set of her chin, in the way her eyes flashed when she was angry. My husband's daughter had been living in my house for 15 years, and I had never seen it. Why did you not tell me? I asked her. Because I was just the maid's daughter to you, Rachel said simply. You never saw me as anything more than part of the furniture. And after a while, I convinced myself it was better that way. Better to be invisible than to risk being rejected by the only family I had left. The words cut deep because they were true. I had dismissed her, ignored her, treated her as nothing more than an extension of her mother's service. And all the while she had been Robert's child, the daughter he had never known he had.
"This is all very touching,"
Marco interrupted, his tone dripping with mockery.
"but we have business to conclude. Eleanor, you are going to sign that contract, and your stepdaughter here is going to ensure that you do,"
Marco said coldly. He gestured to the scarred man who moved behind Rachel's chair. The threat was unmistakable.
"Do not,"
Rachel said quickly. "Mrs. Whitmore, do not sign anything because of me. I cannot let him hurt you," I said, reaching for the pen. "You already hurt me," Rachel replied, her voice soft but steady. "Every day for 15 years you hurt me by refusing to see me. But you know what, I still tried to save you, because that is what family does." Marco's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression shifted slightly.
"It seems we have a complication," he said, looking at his men. "Hotel security is asking questions about our extended stay."
The scarred man spoke rapidly in Spanish. Marco's frown deepened.
"We need to move this along,"
he said, his casual demeanor slipping.
"Eleanor, sign the contract now."
But as I reached for the pen, Rachel caught my eye. In her gaze, I saw something that made my blood run cold with hope. She had a plan. And for the first time since Robert's death, I was not facing danger alone. I had family fighting beside me, even if I had been too blind to see it for 15 years. Marco's patience was wearing thin. I could see it in the way his fingers drummed against the table and the tightness around his eyes as he glanced repeatedly at his phone. Whatever complication had arisen with hotel security was making him nervous. And nervous criminals were dangerous criminals. "Eleanor," he said, his voice carrying a sharp edge, "I am going to count to 10. If you have not signed by then, your stepdaughter will pay the price for your hesitation." The scarred man's hand moved to rest on Rachel's shoulder. She did not flinch, but I saw the slight tension in her posture. "1," Marco began. I gripped the pen, my mind racing. There had to be a way out of this. There had to be something I was missing. "2." Rachel caught my eye and mouthed something I could not quite make out. Then she did it again, more clearly. "Trust me." 3. What plan could she possibly have? We were trapped 18 floors up, with armed men blocking every exit. Even if hotel security was asking questions, they were probably just routine inquiries about checkout times or room service. 4. But then I remembered something. Rachel had been in the business center when she called me. She had been researching Marco online, discovering his true identity. What else might she have found? What else might she have done? 5. Marco's phone buzzed again. This time, when he looked at it, his face went pale. 6. The scarred man leaned down to whisper something in Marco's ear. Whatever he said made Marco's jaw clench. 7. Another buzz. Marco's hand trembled slightly as he read the message. 8. That was when I heard it, the faint sound of sirens in the distance growing closer with every passing second. 9. Marco's eyes snapped to Rachel, who was watching him with something that might have been satisfaction. "What did you do?" he demanded. Rachel smiled, and for the first time since I had known her, it was Robert's smile, confident, defiant, unafraid. "I sent emails, lots of them." I had been collecting the evidence for weeks, waiting for him to make his move. "What kind of emails?" Marco snarled. "To the FBI, to the DEA, to the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Division," she said evenly, her voice steady,
almost conversational. Amazing what you can find when you really dig into someone's background. Amazing what databases a college student can access when she is studying cybersecurity. Marco shot to his feet, his chair toppling backward. You little... I found bank records, Rachel continued, ignoring his rage. Transaction histories, shell companies. I found a whole network of money laundering operations spanning 3 countries. And I found something else. She reached into her jacket pocket, slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might spook the armed men. What she pulled out was a small digital recorder. I have been recording this entire conversation, she said simply. Every threat, every admission, every detail about my father's murder, it is all here. Marco's face went from pale to ashen. Give me that. I cannot. It has already been uploaded to a secure server, along with copies of all those financial records I found. Rachel's smile widened. I may be just the maid's daughter to most people, but I am a computer science major with a specialization in cybersecurity. I know how to protect data. The sirens were much closer now, definitely heading toward the hotel. Marco spun toward the windows, looking down at the street below. How many? He snapped at his men. Looks like a lot, one of them replied, peering through the curtains. FBI, local police, maybe more. Marco's carefully constructed plan was falling apart, and his desperation was making him dangerous. He pulled a gun from inside his jacket, pointing it directly at me. Then we do this the hard way, he said. You are going to call them off, or I start shooting. I cannot call them off, Rachel said calmly. I sent everything on a timer. Even if something happened to me, even if I wanted to stop it, the information is already in federal hands. You are lying, Marco growled. Am I? Rachel tilted her head. When I was down in the business center, I had over an hour to work while you were setting up your little trap. Do you really think I spent that whole time just looking up Marco DeLuca's obituary? Marco's hand shook as he kept the gun trained on me. You have destroyed everything, he hissed. Good, Rachel said simply. That was when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing the suite in an eerie red glow. Through the windows, I could see the flashing lights of what looked like dozens of police vehicles surrounding the hotel. They have cut the power, the scarred man said, his voice tight with concern. Marco's phone rang. He answered it with a sharp, "What?" Even from across the room, I could hear the authoritative voice on the other end. This is Special Agent David Morrison with the FBI. The building is surrounded. You have 5 minutes to send down any hostages and surrender peacefully. Marco ended the call and threw the phone against the wall where it shattered into pieces. This is your fault, he snarled at Rachel. All of it. No, Rachel replied, standing up slowly despite the gun still pointed in our direction. This is your fault. You killed an innocent man because he threatened your business. You tried to use his widow to launder your dirty money. You threatened to kill both of us. This is exactly what you deserve. Shut up, Marco snarled. His composure had completely cracked. Just shut up. But Rachel was not finished. You want to know the really beautiful part, the $300 million you were so eager to clean. I found out where it came from. Marco went very still. It is not just dirty money, Rachel continued. It is stolen money. Money that belongs to a pension fund in Tampa, Florida. Money that belongs to teachers and firefighters and police officers who trusted their retirement savings to the wrong people. The blood drained from Marco's face. How could you possibly know that? He demanded. Because I am good at my job, Rachel said. Better than you thought. Better than you gave me credit for. And because I had help. What kind of help? Marco asked. Rachel looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that made my heart race. Mrs. Whitmore, do you remember your husband mentioning a young woman who worked part-time in the company's IT department while she was in college? Someone who helped him trace those suspicious shipment records. My breath caught. That was you, I managed. I was 18, working under my mother's maiden name Santos, Rachel said. Your husband was the only person in that company who treated me like I mattered, like I had a brain. Her voice softened. He never knew who I was, but he believed in what I could do. When he started investigating those shipping irregularities, I helped him dig deeper. The pieces clicked together with stunning clarity. You knew about Marco all along, I said. I suspected when he approached you 8 months ago, something about his story did not feel right. So, I started digging again, Rachel said, using everything my father taught me about following financial trails. Marco's gun swung between us, his desperation palpable. None of this matters, he spat. You are both still going to die. Are we? Rachel asked. Because I am pretty sure the FBI has sharpshooters positioned outside those windows right now. I am pretty sure they have identified everyone in this room. And I am pretty sure that killing federal witnesses would be the stupidest thing you could possibly do. As if to emphasize her point, a red laser dot appeared on the wall behind Marco, sweeping slowly across the room. 5 minutes are up, came a voice through a bullhorn from outside. Send down the hostages now! Marco's men were looking increasingly nervous. The one by the door kept glancing toward the hallway as if calculating escape routes. The man by the windows had backed away from the glass. Boss, the scarred man said quietly. Maybe we should consider. No, Marco snapped. We do not run. We finish this. But his authority was cracking along with his composure. I could see it in the way his men avoided his eyes, in the way they shifted their weight toward potential exits. You know what the really ironic part is? Rachel said, her voice conversational despite the chaos around us. If you had just left us alone, if you had tried to launder your money through some other company, you might have gotten away with it. But you had to come after the widow of the man you killed. You had to make it personal. She took a step closer to me, positioning herself between Marco's gun and my chair. And the moment you made it personal, she continued, you made it my business because, like it or not, she is family, and family protects family. The words hit me like a physical blow. This young woman I had ignored for 16 years was willing to die to protect me. She had spent months planning this confrontation, gathering evidence, setting traps, all to bring down the man who had killed her father and threatened her family. Her family. Me. I am sorry. I whispered the words, barely audible over the chaos outside. Rachel glanced back at me, her expression softening. For what? She asked. For not seeing you? For not knowing? For treating you like you did not matter? You see me now? She said simply. That is what matters. Marco's backup phone rang again. This time, the voice was louder, more insistent. This is your final warning. Release the hostages immediately, or we are coming up. Marco looked around the suite at his nervous men, at the laser dots now dancing across multiple walls, at the evidence of his crimes being broadcast to federal agents 18 floors below. This is not over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, Rachel replied. It is. And as the sound of footsteps thundered up the stairwell outside, I realized she was right. One way or another, this nightmare was about to end. The suite door exploded inward with a thunderous crash. FBI agents in tactical gear poured through the opening like a black tide, weapons drawn. Voices shouted commands that blended into one overwhelming roar of authority. Get down! Everyone on the ground now! Marco's men did not even try to resist. The scarred man dropped his weapon and raised his hands. The others followed suit, their faces resigned to capture. Only Marco himself remained standing, his gun still wavering between Rachel and me. "It is over!" Special Agent David Morrison called out, his weapon trained on Marco. "Drop the gun and step away from the hostages." For a moment, I thought Marco might actually pull the trigger. His finger tightened on the grip, his eyes wild with the desperation of a cornered animal. But then Rachel did something that stopped my heart. She stepped directly into his line of fire. "Go ahead," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Shoot me. But know that killing Robert Whitmore's daughter will not bring back the $300 million that are already frozen in federal accounts. It will not erase the evidence I have given them. It will not save you from spending the rest of your life in prison." Marco's hand trembled. "You destroyed everything," he spat. "You destroyed yourself," Rachel replied. "The moment you decided to kill an innocent man, the moment you thought you could use his family for your own ends." The gun clattered to the floor. Within seconds, federal agents had Marco and his men in custody. Agent Morrison approached us as the tactical team secured the suite. "Mrs. Whitmore, Ms. Torres, are you both injured?" "We are fine," I managed, though my legs felt like water. "Ms. Torres," Agent Morrison continued, turning to Rachel. "The intelligence package you provided was extraordinary. We have been trying to build a case against this organization for 3 years. Your evidence gave us everything we needed." Rachel nodded, but her attention was focused on me. "Mrs. Whitmore, we should get you checked by a paramedic," she said softly. "I am fine," I said, then caught myself. "Rachel is Eleanor. Please." A small smile touched her lips. "Eleanor?" The next few hours passed in a blur of interviews, statements, and medical examinations. Federal agents wanted to know everything about Marcos, approached to me about the contract terms, about any other business dealings that might be connected to his operation. Rachel and I were kept in separate rooms for most of it, but I found myself constantly looking toward the door, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. When we were finally released, the sun was setting over the city. We stood outside the federal building, both of us exhausted, but somehow lighter than we had been in years. So I said, unsure how to begin. "What happens now?" Rachel adjusted the strap of her bag, looking suddenly uncertain. "I suppose I should find somewhere else to live." "This changes things between you and my mother, between all of us." "Does it have to?" I asked. She looked at me in surprise. "Rachel," I said carefully. "For 15 years, I had Robert's daughter living in my house, and I never knew it. I never saw it. I treated you like you were invisible, and you saved my life anyway." "You do not owe me anything," she said quietly. "I owe you everything." The words came out stronger than I intended. "You could have let Marco destroy me. You could have let me sign that contract and disappear. Instead, you risked your own life to protect someone who had never shown you any kindness." "Your family," she said simply. "That is what family does." "Is it?" I asked softly, because I am not sure I know what family means anymore. I took a deep breath. Would you help me learn?" The hope that flickered in her eyes reminded me so much of Robert that my chest tightened. "I would like that," she said softly. "Good, because I have a proposition for you." She raised an eyebrow, and I could see Robert in that gesture too. "Whitmore Logistics needs someone with your skills. Someone who understands cybersecurity, who can trace financial irregularities, who can protect us from people like Marco." I paused. "I am offering you a job.
A real job with a real salary and real responsibilities. Eleanor, you do not have to. I am not offering this out of guilt. I interrupted. I am offering it because you are brilliant. Because you saved not just my life, but my company. Because you are Robert's daughter, and he would be proud of what you have accomplished. Tears gathered in her eyes. You really mean that? I mean all of it. I reached into my purse and pulled out something I had been carrying for 9 years, Robert's wedding ring, which I had never been able to bear wearing, but could not bring myself to put away. He should have known about you. He would have loved you. I held out the ring. This belongs to his daughter now. Rachel's hands shook as she took it, closing her fingers around the simple gold band. I used to dream about him knowing who I was, she whispered. About him being proud of me. He would have been, I said softly. He is. We stood there, in the fading light, two women who had found each other in the aftermath of violence and deception. The family we had never known we were. There is one more thing, I said. She looked up. What is it? I want to change my will. Rachel looked startled. Eleanor, you do not need to. Yes, I do. Robert's daughter should inherit Robert's company, all of it, when the time comes. I do not want your money, she said firmly. It is not my money. It is our family's legacy. And you are the only family I have left. A year later, I stood in the conference room where Marco had first presented his poisonous offer. The space had been completely redecorated. Gone were the heavy drapes and dark wood that had made the room feel like a tomb. Now it was filled with light modern furniture and photographs that told the story of Whitmore Logistics' resurrection. Rachel sat at the head of the table leading a presentation to our newest clients. As Chief Technology Officer, she had implemented security protocols that made us the most trusted logistics company on the West Coast. Her cybersecurity expertise had not only protected us from future threats, but had also attracted new business from companies that valued digital safety above all else. She wore Robert's ring on a chain around her neck, and sometimes I caught her touching it when she was thinking through a particularly complex problem. The gesture reminded me so much of her father that it still took my breath away. The quarterly reports show a 37% increase in revenue, she was saying, her voice confident and clear. Client retention is at 94%, and we have a waiting list of new companies wanting to partner with us. After the meeting, we walked together to Robert's office, now hers. The space bore little resemblance to how he had left it, but the spirit was the same: integrity. Innovation. Family. I have something for you, Rachel said, pulling out a wrapped package. Inside was a framed photograph I had never seen before. Robert and a young woman who could only be Maria. Both of them laughing at something off camera. Maria looked radiant happy in a way I had never seen during her years working for us. She kept this hidden for 28 years, Rachel said softly. But before she died last month, she wanted you to have it. She wanted you to know that she never meant to deceive you. She loved him. And she wanted me to know him even if it was from a distance. I traced Robert's face in the photograph, seeing joy there that I had forgotten existed. She gave you the greatest gift she could, I said. She let you grow up knowing what kind of man your father was. And you gave me the chance to honor his memory, Rachel replied. By saving the company he built. By building something better. We stood together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the same view Robert had loved now shared by his daughter and his widow. Do you think he would approve? I asked softly.
of how we have changed things, Rachel smiled. That familiar smile that was pure Robert.
I think he would be proud that his family finally found each other. His family. The words filled me with a warmth I had not felt since the day Robert died. I had spent 9 years thinking I was alone, that I had lost everything when I lost Robert. But I had been wrong. His greatest gift had not been the company he built or the legacy he left behind. It had been the daughter he had never known he had. The young woman who had grown up loving him from afar and who had saved us both when it mattered most. Marco was serving 3 consecutive life sentences in federal prison. His money laundering network had been dismantled and the stolen pension funds had been returned to their rightful owners. Justice had been served, but more importantly, a family had been restored. As Rachel and I locked up the office and walked to the parking garage together, I realized that some stories do not end with revenge or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes they end with something much more powerful, the quiet recognition that love and loyalty can exist in the most unexpected places, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal themselves. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that moment comes just in time to save your life. Now I am curious about you, the one listening to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I am leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.